Neal Brown is on the lips of some very prominent colleges potentially getting a new job. He's being the front runner for specifically one. But could he go to Florida as well? And was Kalani Sitake coming back to BYU a disaster for the Big 12? We'll talk about that too.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, guys? Welcome back in. My name is Mountaineer Paul. I am your host. Welcome back into Locked On West Virginia, where we're talking about West Virginia football this time a little bit in a weird, off-colored kind of way. Maybe we should say it's more about Neal Brown than West Virginia this time, but although West Virginia is involved. Thanks for jumping in as we dive into this topic about him. Talking about our friends from Game Time. And right now with Game Time, guys, all we need you to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thanks for making Locked On West Virginia your first listen and for being a part of the number one sports podcast network in the world right now, Locked On Podcast Network, where we talk about your team every single day. We're going to be talking about a few things on this episode. Obviously, I'll give my final thoughts on that recruiting class. I kind of lost track of that earlier. I want to finish my thoughts on some of my favorite players in this class. BYU keeps Kalani Sitake, why that could be really bad for the rest of us, and where will Neal Brown end up, which is where we begin. We start where we start, and that's with Neal Brown, who is, according to several people, including Pete Thamel, the front runner for the North Texas job. As we all know, Neal Brown has spent the last year of his life under Steve Sarkisian at University of Texas Longhorns. Has he been rehabilitated is the good question. He's also being brought up for Florida as well. And we're going to kind of talk about the differences between those two jobs and why Neal may want to pick one over the other. What each job has its own pros and cons associated with it. But what does it mean for West Virginia? Because that's really what matters to us, right? At least I think anyways. So as we know, Eric Morris takes the Oklahoma State job. Brown is right now a special assistant to the head coach at Texas, where we all know they just beat Texas A&M. They're in playoff mode, or at least attempting to be right now. But obviously there is competition for him with Billy Napier, Brian Daboll, which is an interesting name. So let's talk about some talking points here that I think matter. We have to start with Neal Brown's job he did at West Virginia over 6 years. It was a long 6 years from 2019 to 2024. He was 37 and 35. He wasn't absolutely horrific to West Virginia fans. He was at times. But, I mean, it was 500 ball, which is a 5.14 winning percentage, just 2 games over 500 across 72 games. That's a large sample size. In Big 12 play, he was 25 and 28. He was under 500. He never put West Virginia in the top conference title contention. There was 1 year where we were in the conversation, but we ultimately didn't make it due to a Hail Mary from Houston. His teams did make 4 bowl appearances at West Virginia. We went 2-2 in those games. We had the Liberty Bowl and the Duke's Mayo Bowl where he got dumped in Mayo, but it was like the worst thing ever for him. Did he stabilize the program post Dana Holgorsen? Yes. Did he get a bad talent handoff? Absolutely he did. One of the worst, right? One of the 4 or 5 worst in history. I would argue the one that Rich Rodriguez got was possibly worse or just as bad. So West Virginia never cracked the top 25 during the regular season under him. And I think we cracked the coaches poll once. So, that was, and it continues to be a long stretch without national relevance. If you look at his road record, which is one of the worst aspects of his tenure at West Virginia, 13 and 20 on the road overall, including 11 blowouts is what I counted. What I consider a blowout, 17 points or more. Anything over 17 is a blowout to me. 11 blowouts, 17 points or more, which means their team struggled in hostile environments, in Big 12 venues where the travel and crowd noise played a factor. And it means you got to get your guys ready to play. I'm getting mad already again thinking about this. And then you think about context. Well, in his best road year ever, he went 4-1 in conference away games. So he did show flashes of improvement that year. But then you look at the teams we played, and they're like, oh, okay, they were just god-awful teams that year. But the overall mark contributed to the fan frustration, I think, overall, with his inconsistent road play. And we all know about the number that every West Virginia fan can recite, which is where he was 3-16 against AP top 25 opponents during his time at West Virginia. You just can't be that bad. Got to be a little closer to 500. And the 3 wins were not really notable. Maybe one was Kansas State was ranked 16th when you beat them, but they ended up not being very good. It's funny, with all these teams, none of them ended up being very good, including Virginia Tech. Baylor was also number 22 when you beat them. So, the losses, and these losses always came in lopsided fashion, where you're talking about you had elite competition, right? At home, he fared slightly better at 3-7 versus ranked wins, which is like, where all the wins came at home, right? No wins on the road versus. So at the end of the day, it was a struggle for Neal Brown. We know that. But he was elite at Troy. We know that. He went to LSU and won a game. He went to Nebraska and won a game. But you know who else was on that staff, and it's been proven more and more to maybe be a big deal? That's John Summerall. Yeah, he just got the Florida job. Yeah, Neal Brown was the head coach. Now the times have changed. John Summerall may be calling Neal Brown to come and be something like he was for Neal Brown. So maybe John Summerall can go get another job at Ohio State or something, and it'll all be Neal Brown's. Neal Brown will take all the credit after he leaves. in all seriousness, John Summerall obviously had a huge factor. Played a huge factor in those teams, right? We know that now. That's history. You also had Chad Scott, who's an excellent coach. You had Matt Moore, who was a good coach to very good coach. You had Jordan Leslie, who is an assistant, would be a very good assistant to have. Not a defensive coordinator necessarily, but I do think he'd be a great assistant. He's a pretty smart guy. He's got a great personality. Seemed to be a decent recruiter. Seemed to know X's and O's. But he was in over his head at the Big 12 level. But, and I don't for a second think he's not an assistant that you could hire, right? So they had a good staff is what I'm saying at Troy. Maybe even an elite staff for Group of 5. So could he do it again at another Group of 5 school? That's a good question. Here's what West Virginia fans care about. Which one pays more, right? If he lands a North Texas gig or any other head coaching role, it's a big plus for West Virginia's budget because he's owed an estimated $10 to $12 million when he was fired in 2024, spread over the remaining years. So per the standard clauses in the contract, any salary from a new job offsets what West Virginia pays. So if North Texas offers him $2 million a year annually, that could save West Virginia obviously millions. Which frees up cash for Rich Rod's staff to boost recruiting NIL, recruiting/NIL, facility, whatever you want to do with it, right? It's not just about money. It just closes the book on that chapter officially and cleanly, which I think is important as well. And we can just fully move forward and get out of the way from any more comparisons to Neal and Rich Rod. The cons of the job are it is a Group of 5 program in the American Athletic Conference. And even when an 11-1 season, you only got a shot at the CFP. If you've got other teams that play tougher records or are better name brands than you at North Texas, like a BYU or like a Boise or a Washington State or an Oregon State or something like that, I feel like they would probably get some credence over an 11-1 North Texas. If you go undefeated, then it doesn't matter. But the pros are there's way less pressure. expectations are bowl eligibility and conference contention, but not national titles or Big 12 titles like at West Virginia. So I think he has room to build at a place like North Texas without a bunch of scrutiny, which would be good for him. And it's also a step down from Big 12 play. And it also aligns with his Troy success because they were 35-16 there. And I think you're getting a talent handoff. Well, you're getting a situation at North Texas that's really good right now, and you can just continue building it. You may even bring some Texas players over with you, right? So you're going to bring Chad Scott with you most likely. Like there's a lot to that would be good. Chad Scott's excellent. Matter of fact, if I was North Texas, I would heavily consider Chad Scott to be the head coach, to be honest. If it's me, that's the hire I would make. Anyway, it's a smaller budget. Obviously, it's got less recruiting. It's got, smaller facilities. But it's going to be tougher to attract top talent, but it's Texas. And even the leftovers in Texas are really good at the group of 5 level, and especially JUCO guys that you can get. So, and North Texas is a destination place because it's in Texas, man. It's a great place to live, right? In Denton, I don't really know a lot about Denton, but I imagine it's probably better than a lot of places in West Virginia as far as the weather and the climate and everything. As far as the Florida job goes, he's being named for that too as an offensive coordinator to potentially go up there and coach alongside his former guy and John Summerall. So obviously, if you look at the opening after Billy Napier, it is still blue blood. It's similar. It's right there, potentially blue blood compared, depending on who you ask, with the massive upside, right? Top tier NIL or at least top half of the SEC NIL. You've got elite facilities. You've got an elite recruiting pipeline that's as good as Texas, if not better some years. And you could really accelerate the success there if you can win some recruiting battles. And Brown is a good OC, not a terrible OC. He's not an incredible OC, but he's not a bad OC. I will give him that. The high visibility means you're going to have to win now. You're going to have to win right now at Florida within 2 years. So, the salary for that could end up being over the course of 3 or 4 years. Hell, you can end up getting between $4 and $6 million probably over the course of 3 or 4 years there. If you're at $1.5, $2 million. I don't really know what OCs get in the SEC, but maybe you get $2 million a year. So $6 to $8 million over 3 or 4 years. I mean, it could be substantial. Could probably be more than North Texas even. And they're not going to expect anything less than SEC titles there. They're not. So the spotlight amplifies the pressure, and it also amplifies the failures, right? You're rebuilding an SEC program in a conference with Georgia and Alabama. Good luck. And Auburn and other places, right? So you're kind of challenging yourself there, but you wouldn't have your name on it necessarily, but it's still a risk. You could be looking for a job in 2 years. So I think there's mixed thoughts about it. I think there's mixed opinions of it. West Virginia, Neal had some solid wins. You had some decent development, but no breakthroughs. And I think that's the biggest mark against Neal, no breakthrough at West Virginia. But North Texas is definitely a different kind of monster and a spot I think he could win at, to be honest with you. As a matter of fact, I think it's the perfect spot for him. And the biggest reason he has to be a front runner is Rem Baker. We know Rem Baker loves Neal Brown. We know Rem Baker would probably go to bat for Neal Brown and say, hey, look, he didn't get this full NIL support that Rich Rod's getting right now. Had he gotten it, maybe he would have been more successful. And if you can give him some support at North Texas, he'll have a chance. But overall, this is big for West Virginia because it looks like he's finally going to get paid some and get us off of the books for it. And that's what it's all about for us. But as far as Neal goes, we'll cover it when he does move, if he does move. I think it's interesting. Obviously we know he was a nice guy for sure. Absolutely he was. But at the end of the day, we can't let our program be run into the ground, and that's what was happening. So, wishing Neal the best. I think Chad Scott would be a better hire if you're asking me my personal opinion. I really believe that. I think Chad Scott's ready for a job, even though the way things ended with Neal kind of hurt him for that. I do think Chad Scott could be a good head coach somewhere if he gets a chance. I really do. Your running back room would be good every year, too. Thanks for making Locked On West Virginia your first listen, guys. We will jump over to a break and come back and talk Sitake. BYU keeps Kalani Sitake and why you should be really nervous about it. Next. We're talking about Omaha Steaks on this one, guys, as the holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift. And Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. This week is the best time to jump in because there's cyber sales here and the deals are huge. The quality is exactly what you hope for. Tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. The variety undefeated. Steaks, burgers, comfort meals, sides, desserts. It's really one of those gifts that truly fits anyone. Save big on unforgettable gifts on Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. All right, let's jump into segment 2 where we crack a do. Kalani Sitake has been retained by BYU. It looks like that mess is kind of finally over. And here's why, if you're a Big 12 fan, you should worry about this a little bit. You know, hell hath no fury like the BYU people scorn, because they were about to lose the guy they've had for a long time. And I think at the end of the day, they're going to pay him a lot of money to stay, but they're also going to give him a lot of money into his recruiting budget and his NIL budget. So a lot of those kids that BYU was already signing 5 stars in basketball. They're already signing a bunch of play. Look where they're at in football. They're already 11-1. But they're not Texas Tech, right? Kalani Sitake, and you're probably going to see this in the championship game unless Texas Tech plays poorly. I think Texas Tech is probably the better team on paper and should win the game. BYU could win the game, absolutely. But what will likely happen is Texas Tech will just be a little bit too much for them, and they'll probably win the game. I want BYU to win. I do. I want BYU to win, obviously. But I don't think they will in this game after what we saw against Texas Tech. And it is probably a glaring sign, a glaring neon sign of Kalani Sitake that we need more. Penn State, I could have more in every way. Prestige, recruiting, facilities, support, finances, nutrition, donor base. I mean, they've got it all. Everything you could get at Michigan or Ohio State, they pretty much got at Penn State, maybe just to 1 or 2 degrees less. They're on the same page as a Florida. They're on the same page as an Auburn. The same page, right? Same page as maybe in Oregon, even maybe a notch less than Oregon, but they're in that category. So how do you fault a guy for looking at that scenario, even if he is Mormon, even if he is LDS Church, even if he is somebody that, by the way, I loved meeting, and his dad and I spent, that hour talking with each other. It was a great time. It really was. I learned a lot from Tom Sitake that day, and I really do. It changed me, right? Going to BYU, as a lot of y'all know, changed me. And I have a lot of respect for the people there. I also have a lot of respect for what they go through. They get made fun of a lot. A lot of people were kind of dancing on their grave here with Sitake leaving. They would have been fine ultimately, but I see why. people were doing that. And I think at the end of the day, they assembled the Avengers, right? They got the crumble cookies guy. They've got all these different CEOs that are in Provo. And if you ever go to Provo, they've got everything from crumble cookies. They've got dirty sodas that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head real quick, but they've got these dirty sodas. This company that invented those there, or right there. I don't know if it's in Utah or right there in Provo, but they've got all these unique food places. They've got a lot going on, and I highly suggest going if you ever get a chance to visit for a game. But you know, they've got a lot to offer, is what I'm saying, and it's a great college town. The best scenery I've almost ever seen, and I've been to all lower 48 states. So it's up there, right? They've got a lot. It's the best scenery in the Big 12 for sure, from a stadium perspective. If you've never actually seen it, it's really good. So, but it's still, is it a lot? Is it going to, is it going to compete with what? Is it going to compete with what Penn State has? It's a great question. I certainly think that's a fair question to ask. I think the answer is probably still no to an extent, unless BYU ups the ante, which they did. That's what happened. I don't know to what extent exactly. I would like to know, but I don't know. At least we'll probably find out. I mean, this news is kind of fresh still. As my cat's jumping up here. Look at this view they get. If you've ever been to their stadium, that's what it looks like literally in their stadium. It's incredible. It's an incredible view. They've got the mountains everywhere surrounding them, and driving around that area outside that stadium is incredible. So, yeah, they've got a lot going on there. So, am I surprised that he was actually so close to doing it? I kind of am. Not because Penn State's not a better opportunity. It's just because you're in the LDS church doesn't mean you're tied to it for life. But I do think that, it's a heavy weight, right? And I think it was weighing on Kalani to potentially leave that situation. When I met with his dad, they told me this. They moved from Hawaii in the 70s, right? And they used to park outside of the stadium, listen to the game on the radio, and listen to the crowd roar as Kalani Sitake was a kid. That's what they did. And like I said to him in person, which is one of my great lines ever, I said, so you went from sleeping outside the stadium to literally ruling from within it. I think that's a cool line. Maybe it's not as cool as I think, but I think it's a cool situation either way. From sleeping outside the stadium to ruling from within it as the undeniable ruler of all things BYU. And Tom just gets to ride around on his golf cart and run for mayor every year, and interesting situation there with him too. But I'm not surprised that he's staying, but I am surprised it got as far as it did. But then again, on the other hand, I'm not, because of how much Penn State has to offer too. But it's going to be rough for us because we're going to compete with now, not only to this new contract, but this new dedication from all these new sources that have had to throw back into the pot on what was already a pretty good pot that we would probably like to have. It's probably already better than what we had or have. And now it's probably gotten, you'd have to think at least 50% better, maybe doubled. BYU is going to be a tough out for the foreseeable future. And the more I think about it, the more I think they're going to be a heavy contender to go to the Big Ten or SEC someday if they keep going this direction, because they already compete for the top views in the Big 12 because of the Mormon Church, the LDS Church. They have 17 million members, and probably half of them watch BYU. So they get a lot of viewership just because of that. That's also the state of Utah. Then you throw in if there's going to, I mean, they're getting 5-star basketball players now. They're 11-1 in football. Like, it's a great time to be a BYU fan right now. They're in the heyday of how we were in the early 2000s, kind of. So they're going into that, and we're kind of not. I hope we get there again, but it takes a lot. So we'll see what happens. I'm not going to give up on us, obviously, either. But sometimes, I don't hate it that BYU is getting better necessarily. I worry about us as an extension, right? Because we're worried about us. That's all. So glad he stayed. I think that's a big deal for BYU. Had he left, it would have made things easier for us in the next couple of years because, it would have in recruiting and getting better and not having to play a really great BYU team every year. If whether that's in conference or in a championship game or whatever, if you get there, but now they're stronger, and good luck, sweetheart. Going to break. We're coming back out. We got a couple other players to talk about as far as in this recruiting class who are some big timers. Talking about game time on this one, guys. When it comes to game time, the World Cup coming back to North America for the first time since '94. 48 teams for the first time ever is going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. Well, that's where game time comes in pretty clutch for you. Finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With game day or with game time, you can track your price drops in real time. You can get seat alerts when great seats open, and you can buy the tickets the moment they hit the app. Puts the power back in your hands, and it makes going to the World Cup even easier instead of impossible, much more realistic. You pull up the app, the layout makes it really simple. It's really easy to follow along with. You scroll through the matchups and compare seat views. The seat view feature is a game changer because you can see what the pitch looks like from your seat when you buy or the field. Pretty good stuff. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase where the terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off, and you can swipe tap ticket, go download Game Time today where you'll answer that question of all questions. What time is it? It's game time. All right. Yes, the mascot did make an appearance. She's still right here beside me. She's putting her butt up in my face. I just got done feeding them their cat litter, or not feeding them feeding them their cat litter. I just got done putting cat litter in their box right before I got on camera, and I mean, it just totally dusted me. So my shirt's got like this cat litter dust all in it. Okay. I hate cat litter, dealing with it. It's just so nasty. Sometimes it gets down in your throat. It's like breathing in dust. I hate it. I sometimes have to wear a mask around it. All right. So some of my favorite players I was mentioning earlier, I kind of got sidetracked. Who knows what sidetracked me? It's not hard, is it? Obviously, if you go by ranking, Kedrick Triplett, Kevin Brown are the, along with Deshaun Woods, are the three highest. Then you get to Jaron Hughley. So those guys are obviously really good. And with Vincent Smith, Jonas Muya is right there. Christopher Talley is right there. Damon Allen is right there too. Sir Paul Cheeks, just a point below that. Martavius Boswell, who I talked about earlier. Cam Mallory is from Moody, Alabama, the defensive lineman, who I am just in love with, as a lot of y'all know. Camden Gillespie, the edge. Emery Snyder, who is a big safety. Robert Stitt, the wide receiver out of Niceville, tall, fast. Cade Bush, tight end. Forgot about him, out of Minnesota. Noah Tischendorf, who just sent me his tape a couple of days ago I actually was supposed to have him on the show and forgot about it. If you guys want Tischendorf to come on, type yes in the chat. He's a player signed to West Virginia. I kind of want to wait till after signing day. You know what I mean? Landon Drum, we know he just signed as a wide receiver. Carter Kessler, LaMarcus Dillard, Caleb Gordon, Sam Hamilton, Damari Williams, Mekhi Boone, Cameron Dwyer, Jaden Ballard, Wyatt Brown, Camden Goforth, Antoine Sharp, Rayshawn Reynolds, Rhett Morris, Malachi Thompson, Ricky Giles, Aiden Woods, Charlie Hannafin, Samaj Hill, and Miles Cotchery being the last on the list. Miles Cotchery is a great one. I like him. I can find something to like about all the players, but if you just want me to say who I think are straight up dogs, Cam Goforth, you have to put on the list, right? If you don't know who he is, just type in Camden Goforth on Twitter or X, and you'll find him. He's a very good self-promoter, and has a let the body sit the floor style pancake video that is really good. He's probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest, recruits in this class. If he can get his athleticism and everything all refined, he's going to be an all-pro or an all-conference type player for us. But he has some things he has to get better at. I mentioned Caleb Gordon on the last one. I mentioned Martavius Boswell on the last one. I've been talking about this guy for a long time now, and I should get some of his tape to show. Cam Dwyer, the linebacker out of Palm Beach Central in Royal Palm Beach, Florida High, he is an absolute missile. I love Camden Dwyer. He's just one of my favorite players. Oh man, his tape is so good. He's skinny, he doesn't have a whole lot of size necessarily. But I mean, if you want to talk about from an athleticism standpoint and can he run, he's got some of the best wheels of anybody in the class. I love this kid. This is Zach Alley special written all over it. He could play that Fred Perry nickel spot if he needed to, or he can play straight up linebacker if you put some weight on him. But man, does he have wheels? And when I say does he have wheels, I mean he's got wheels on him. I love him, guys. I really do. He's by far one of my favorites. You got to go check him out, Cam Dwyer. But yeah, he's in my top 3 or 4. I really like him a lot. So he's got a lot going on with him. He's been committed for a while too, since April. He's rated no higher than an 86 on any given website, probably due to size, 6'2", 180, right? So he's got he's got to gain some size. But I mean, when you look at him from an athleticism standpoint, he zooms, man, across the field, and I love it. I love it. So he's one, and I'll give you one more. Who we want to go with? I've already told you guys Robert Stith before. I do like him. I went on and on about Cam Mallory before too. Try to give you just somebody that I haven't talked about yet. But it's not everybody in this class I don't just love like that. So we may not have any more. We'll just go with we'll go ahead and just go with Cam Mallory. I got to go with him. I mean, I would like to go with somebody else, but I don't want to lie. So Cam Mallory is the defensive lineman out of Moody, Alabama, who is got a chance to be a really good inside interior defensive lineman for West Virginia. He is an absolute man-child. Love his tape in a lot of ways. He's got tape where he's doing a Superman dive, literally over top of a guy trying to cut him, and he actually tackles somebody in that situation. It's pretty cool. He's really good at just clogging up lanes. He's going to be potentially a good 3 technique, like an Eddie V type player, but stronger. You know, the kid we played, Hunter, from Lee Hunter, we just played from Texas Tech. He's similar to that. I'm not saying he's that good, but like he's that kind of player, space eater, really tough to move. So yeah, he's probably another one that I really like too, but he's got a little more athleticism to his game. So that's pretty much it. I think it's time to jump out. Thank you guys so much for coming here tonight. I'm probably going to take the rest of the night off and just relax for a little bit. Neal Brown finalizing a 5-year deal with North Texas. Wow. Well, I'll just change the title on this then. All right, guys. Thank you so much for everything. We're out of here. By the way, check out Locked On Big 12 next. And don't forget to cue those country roads.